Hey everybody, Kat here. Welcome to the channel. Hope you're having a great day. It's Tuesday morning and we've got to talk about the royal family. I mean, they are just beset with so much infighting and inner turmoil right now. Especially going into the Christmas season. I mean, it's awful. We've got a case where Christmas is coming. They have the traditions at Sandringham where everybody gets together, the whole family, and they open the present. They do all of these traditions that, for 100 years it's been the same. Well, this year nobody's getting along. We've got Andrew and Sarah that have been pretty much banished, so they're not going to be there. Beatrice and Eugenie, I think that they're going to avoid it as well. William and Catherine are going to show up for part of it, but they're going to spend the bulk of their time at Amner Hall with her parents. The problems with the royal family, in my opinion, go back a long way. This kind of, and I've talked about it before, and we've seen it with Andrew and William and the way they all act towards each other. Harry, they're all fighting for their peace. They're all, everybody feels put upon, at the same time feeling incredibly entitled. And this is, we look at it and we don't understand. For example, well, when Harry put out Spare, first of all, and I mean, I'm not defending Harry, I'm not a Harry apologist, I'm just saying, not everything he's said is a lie. And you can kind of begin to understand why he feels about things the way he does sometimes, Here's the thing. Everybody got really offended when Spare came out. People were even saying, look at that title. How obnoxious. Here he is, this fabulous prince, second in line to, and Spare. What an ungrateful person. Well, you got to remember, he's been called Spare all his life. It was his mother Diana that coined the phrase spare and an heir. Before her, no second son in the family was ever called the Spare. No. And in Diana's own words, she described Harry as, quote unquote, a sort of a backup, unquote, to William. He was to be there to fulfill and support anything his brother needed at any time. That's his role. He is the Spare. That was Diana. That was Diana that called him that. That was Diana that told the world how she considered her own son position. But the thing you got to understand, we're different than those people. Diana was an aristocrat. Diana had more royal blood in her than any of the German royals, to be honest, and that's why they wanted her, But now, in my opinion, so she understood the hierarchical conditions within the royal family, how it worked, and why that was why things were done that way, and she respected that. You know, uh, she admitted herself that yeah, she probably spoiled. Well, we know she did spoil Harry to no end to try to compensate for his position. Can you imagine? Yeah. So even Diana knew Harry's fate and called him the Spare. So I'm just saying, don't blame Harry for an obnoxious title of the book. He was called that from the moment he was born. He grew up in a household knowing he was the Spare and what it meant. Just saying, this is how these royals operate. It's different than us. Um, we heard one just okay around Christmas. You know, all this dissent, all the problems right now that are swirling within the royal family. And there's a Christmas, and we've heard William talk about some of these antiquated sort of traditions that he wants to do away with once he's monarch, and they seem like little things. But then we've discovered, look how, what we look at little petty things and say, oh, you rich buggers, and you're bitching about who gets more sausages, who gets the smallest room. But within that family, that is really true. They are treated differently dependent upon their status within the family slash organization, the monarchy. It's true. For example, even one thing that William has mentioned, the Christmas tradition that he wants to get rid of. Okay, so they have this tradition, German tradition, they open their presents Christmas Eve. But what they do, they don't spend a lot of money on each other. It's like, we're all billionaires, but we're gonna buy everybody each other a $6 gag gift. This is how they relate to us, right? So, but they can't resist. So all the presents for each other are wrapped and laid out on a large trestle table in one of the rooms. And it is by rank that one goes to the table and retrieves their present and opens it. So, of course, King will go first, then Camilla, then William, then Catherine, then the children, and then the next crew. It's by rank. And so, if you're like one of Zara Phillips' daughters, or Zara Tyndall's daughters, you're at the end of the line. You'll always be the last person that has to wait and get their present, because that's how you're at the bottom of the list. You're still here, but you're less than. This is the thing. This is how they grow up. And when you have, say, a Spare that they don't really, all the attention is put on the heir, and the Spares are just kind of like, well, they don't have a role, we don't know what to, and we saw this with Princess Margaret. Her erratic, crazy behavior, carousing and partying and affairs and kind of wild living. Because she was indeed the Spare. She even talked about it, where once Elizabeth became the heir presumptive and her father became king and she became heir, everything changed. Her education, of course, shifted. Before that, the girls were educated at home, but together. And after that, of course, by the time she was 10 years old, Elizabeth had constitutional tutors and was learning languages and all of these things. And Margaret, who was quite artsy and intelligent, didn't get the same education. Things were cut off for her. You know, she learned piano, she learned singing in French, and but you know, she didn't get, in a generation perhaps like now, she would have been allowed to go to university. But yeah, she was not allowed to pursue any education. It just stopped for her. And she said in an interview on the show in Britain called Desert Island Discs, I think it's a CBC radio show, that is one of the things that she that that always disappointed her, that she always kind of held a grudge against her mother, never forgave her for not allowing her to pursue an education, because of course she was a spare, she was less than. We saw it with, well, and interestingly enough, here's another connection, right? The king, their father, Elizabeth, used to call Elizabeth and Margaret his pride and joy. Elizabeth was his pride, Margaret was his joy. She was his plaything. She was his favorite because Elizabeth was bound for duty. Okay, so you skip to Andrew, the other spare. Incredibly entitled, incredibly spoiled, really didn't get that much of an education, but it didn't matter because, of course, he's the spare. Incredibly indulged by his mother, widely now known as she was his favorite as well. And there's reasons for that. Look up Lord Porchester. Yeah. But nonetheless, another overly indulged, spare. And I mean, Andrew was so arrogant right from the beginning. He thought he should be king, you know. So he never really accepted the position of spare. And then you get to somebody like Harry, and here we go again. His mother called him the spare. He knew it from the beginning. I mean, not only by the actions of everybody around him treating him less than, but also being named that, called that, told that from the time he was a child. Can you imagine our, Saint Diana could have been the cause of a lot of the psychological damage that Harry has suffered, especially, can you imagine all the conflicting stuff after she died, right? And again, I'm not apologizing for Harry. He's been atrocious, his behavior. But I don't think he ever got the counseling he needed. And I mean, right from the beginning, this is why everybody said, oh, it's so petty. Oh, he got the smallest room in the castle. Poor guy. He only got 2 sausages and William got 3. Aw, quit your bitching, quit your whining, Harry, you indulged little prat. Yeah, that's how we look at him. But imagine if you grew up in that family and you knew of your family's importance, but you were treated amongst them, you were treated less than from day one. I mean, we saw Margaret go sideways. We've seen what this overindulgence has done to Andrew. Harry's had psychological problems from the time he was a child. So I'm saying it's not all Harry's fault. The whole nature versus nurture thing. If you grew up always knowing you were less than everybody else, you know, might just affect you. Might just affect you. And we know some facts now that change the dynamic as well. You know, Harry said, oh, they all brief against me. They're all briefing against each other and planting stories. And we all told Harry he was stupid. Some people even went to say, you know, Harry suffers from the same kind of paranoia his mother did. Well, we know all about that now, don't we? They destroyed Diana. And that includes Charles and Camilla, who did brief against her, who people they knew that planted stories in the papers, you betcha. People said, when Harry brought it up, people said, oh, look at him, oh, poor Harry, paranoid, everybody's against him, oh, poor Harry, this never happened. You had royal reporters come out and say, this never happens. Stories are never planted against each other. Well, now we know it's true. Now we know it's true. And they're still doing it. We see this. There's certain publications that are not pro-monarchy that take digs at Catherine on a daily basis. They don't even get her name right. Princess Kate or Kate Middleton, after being, 14 years. She's been with the royal family over 20 years. She has a title. Just saying. So this goes on, and it really does go on. I mean, if one thing this whole Harry Meghan thing has done, it has brought out a couple of things that we need to pay attention to. Just saying. And we're in a position now where, and I've talked about this, the public's fed up with them. Fed up with the king. He's let down his people. He's the Church of England, bulldozer, it's done. Yeah. And the king's actions now, in my opinion, and I'm sure his cancer diagnosis and his own mortality is kind of leading some of these decisions he's making, however wrong they are. He knows, in the overall scheme of things, that after he's gone, what's he gonna be most known for? The shitty way he treated Diana. Everything. The whole thing. Put it at the feet of Charles. And Camilla. Absolutely. And now with Harry, and see, this is the thing. Charles wants to be known. He wants his legacy to perhaps be that he brought everybody back together again. Charles, the convener, brought the wayward son back into the fold. But you know what? Nobody wants it. And what Charles thinks will be a brilliant move for his legacy will just prove what a bonehead he is. This guy has done all of this. He doesn't want any of the restrictions of being a royal, but he wants all the perks. Sorry, if you're going to be royal and you're going to have a royal family, and this is the structure of the royal family, I'm sorry, you're either in or out. Charles is under his direction, and granted, the Queen could have done a lot more while she was alive, but we know she wouldn't act against Andrew any further. She took some of his titles away. She downgraded his status. But that's all she could do. She couldn't face banishing him. And here we have Charles, who some believe, the Queen kind of gave him a take care of Andrew mission kind of thing before she died. So when the public got upset when he lost his status, yeah, Charles took his security away. But he paid for it himself. This whole debacle about trying to get him out of royal lodges opened a snake's nest of trouble for the royal family, because now everybody's talking about not just Andrew in Royal Lodge, but the kind of deals that Edward and Sophie get for their big place. Can't remember the name right this minute, but yeah. And the deal with Forest Lodge, William and Catherine, supposedly they're paying rent. We don't know, but all this is done is amplify a mistrust of the public that is growing, because there seems to be no resolution to this. It just gets worse and worse. Andrew's supposed to be banished. Well, we took all kinds of stuff away from him. But it's going to be about a year before we can get him out of Royal Lodge. And, we've got different houses he can choose from. He'll get his shooting parties and, like I said yesterday, he's had a kick in the ego. That's it. And don't be surprised when you hear about the millions of dollars that have been awarded to Andrew and Sarah as some kind of a compensation for all of this. These two, Andrew and Sarah, are a couple of the shiftiest. Wow. And it looks like their daughters are involved too. And this is all, the public trust is out the window. Because here they are. We're funding these clowns. We're funding these reprobates. The public's not happy. Now, everybody is counting on William. And William's talked about this. He wants changes within the monarchy, and I think a lot of what he's talked about is a reorganization, more so not even towards the public, but an organizational change within. He wants more of a family model and less of a monarchy model from within. He doesn't like the distinctions of position within what's supposed to be a family when you meet as a family. Like that trestle table story, the Christmas presents. the king goes first, you go by order of rank within the organization, is when you get your present. That also works for other events and dinners and this and that. If you're the least on the total, you will always be the least, you know? And that's usually the youngest too. So from the time you're a child, you are the least of them. And I mean, that's why we have all these conflicts now. Harry can act out all he wants. Charles still gonna try to bring him back and resolve things, even though it's never gonna happen. Charles can't resist trying to be that guy, that fixed everything. No, it's not going to work, and it's only causing problems with everybody else. We've known for a very long time that there's a huge conflict between William and the king on how things are being done. I've said for a very long time in my whole playlist, King Charles III, Life Imitating Art, that William would take control behind the scenes. And we're seeing that now. We've certainly seen it with the way they've been dealing with Andrew. William did in 3 weeks what the king couldn't do in 3 years. It's stalled now, but, and I have said it's a matter of months till this is sorted. Things are going to get interesting. But yeah, William wants to change things within the family. If you hear him speak, it's within the family structure that most of the changes are going to be made. The way he deals with the public and what the public wants right now is transparency, because they're upset about the money, they're upset about, and you're not going to get that from William, I'll tell you right now. Last year, Charles, to try to be transparent, he disclosed the taxes he paid, not all of them, just on one piece of his income, but anyway, he's something, right? We don't know what's going on. But yeah, and William said, no, I'm not telling you how much tax I pay. I'm not telling you anything about my finances. So there you go. And as a monarch, that would be his right. He doesn't have to. How's this going to play with the wider public? I don't know. William certainly will have a quote-unquote honeymoon period, because after the disaster of things that we're seeing right now, once William steps in and begins to righten the ship, as they say, he will get a lot of support, because there's a lot of people that have been waiting for him. Everybody knew that Charles, just because of his age alone, would be rather a transitional monarch anyway. Probably wouldn't change things too much. But in light of the turmoil that the royal family finds itself in, and agents of chaos like Harry and Meghan, it's all looks to be unraveling pretty quickly. It's a royal house in a lot of trouble. So I tell you, can't be too soon for William to step in. It's coming. Hope you enjoyed this. Like, subscribe, leave me a comment. I want to know what you're thinking. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, everybody.